Okay, a media company called Ozzy Media that you probably haven't heard of had their COO, I kid you not, impersonate a YouTube executive while trying to close a $40 million investment from Goldman Sachs. Okay, so to give you background on Ozzy, which you probably don't know about, it is a digital media company, whatever that means. They produce a ton of newsletters, a ton of podcasts, YouTube shows, and in-person events, virtual events, and they make the majority of their revenue apparently from paid partnerships, which means sponsorships, which means advertising that's not tracked. Basically, when you hear partnerships, it means people are one-off paying for something, and maybe they're not looking at the ROI, the return on investment, exactly like they might on Facebook or Twitter when they're buying ads. They have licensed programming deals with a bunch of platforms: Hulu, Amazon, History Channel, PBS, BBC, YouTube. And supposedly they make 8 figures from Ozzy Fest. OZY Fest is according to Axios, which is a 2-day live event, which is kind of like comedy plus music plus discussion. So they're kind of taking like a little bit of TED, a little bit of Coachella, and a little bit of like, is it the Aspen Comedy Festival or Telluride? There's some comedy festival people go to where you just go see comedians back to back to back. I don't know what that would be like to go to a comedy festival and go to like 10 comedy shows in 3 or 4 days. Maybe that'd be interesting. I'm curious if anybody's ever been to that. So Ozzy Fest was postponed in 2019 and 2020. And in 2021, Ozzy is hosting 3 virtual festivals. Just a little side note, they were sued by Ozzy Osbourne's Ozfest back in 2017. I don't know if Ozzy won that, but when I first heard Ozfest, I thought it was Ozzy Osbourne's Ozfest, but spelt slightly differently. They launched in 2013, quote, as a Gen X dream of what millennial media ought to be. Earnest, policy-focused, inclusive, according to the New York Times article. In other words, my generation, people were born in the 70s and 80s, trying to think about what millennials who were born right before the year 2000, what they would want in a media company, policy-focused, woke, you get the idea. So in 2021, Axios reported that Ozzy Media did $50 million in revenue in 2020 and was profitable. Some more numbers that Ozzy gave Axios: revenue growth of 50% year over year for 4 years in a row. Ozzy's 5 newsletters collectively having more than 20 million subscribers. The New York Times article compared this claim to Morning Brew, which said it had 3 million subscribers, yet seems to have much more reach than Ozzy, so that's a little weird. And according to PitchBook, Ozzy has raised over 80 million since 2013, was last valued at 160 million in November of 2019. So that's the background. The co-founder, Carlos Watson, is the CEO and also their star talent. Watson has his own interview show, The Carlos Watson Show. I've never seen it. I'd never heard about him before Ozzy Media, and I'm in the media space, so it's a little weird. And he helps co-host other podcasts and shows on Ozzy. Quote from the New York Times article, Mr. Watson often disavowed an interest in turning the company into a vehicle for his own broadcasting talent. So he was dealing with that, same issue Oprah has Martha Stewart had, where they become the figureheads. That's what grows the brand, but then you become a bit of a liability. All right, so here's the story, and this is just bonkers. In 2021, Goldman Sachs was working on closing a $40 million investment into Ozzy Media, according to the New York Times. On February 2nd, Ozzy executives, including Watson, had a Zoom call booked with members of Goldman's investment team and YouTube's head of unscripted programming, Alex Piper. Piper was included on the call as part of Goldman's diligence to verify Ozzy's claims about their traction on YouTube. Piper was apparently running late and had trouble connecting to the Zoom call, so he suggested they do an old school conference call over the phone at the last minute. That's a little red flag, right? Because Zoom works every time. Like, conference calls don't work. That's why we all went to Zoom, because Zoom does work and is stable. So to go has anybody ever said, let's not do a Zoom, let's go back to the old conference calling system? That's never happened. That's not a thing. Super red flag for everybody at Goldman Sachs, clearly. So once everyone switched to the conference call, Piper allegedly told the team from Goldman, quote, Ozzy was a great success on YouTube, racking up significant views and ad dollars, and that Mr. Watson was as good a leader as he seemed to be. So, okay, now we're going to take a crazy turn. Quote from the New York Times article. As he spoke, however, the man's voice began to sound strange to the Goldman Sachs team. As though it might have been digitally altered. What? After the meeting ended, someone from Goldman reached out to YouTube's Piper via their assistant, not via the Gmail address on the calendar invite. A Gmail address? Piper received the message, but was confused and told the investor that he had never spoken to them before. Dun, dun, dun. And that's not something you want to hear if you're Goldman Sachs, obviously. When YouTube learned that someone had apparently impersonated one of their executives at a business meeting, its security team started an investigation, obviously. And here's the quote from the New York Times article. Within days, Mr. Watson had apologized profusely to Goldman Sachs, saying the voice on the call belonged to Samir Roa, the co-founder and chief operating officer of Ozzy. I hope I'm pronouncing that name. Rao or Roa? Rao, maybe. R-A-O. In an apology email to Goldman Sachs, Ozzy's CEO Carlos Watson, quote, said, he attributed the incident to a mental health crisis and shared what he said were the details of Mr. Rao's diagnosis. Samir Rao took time off work after the incident, but is now back working at Ozzy, and the board never formally investigated the matter. One more crazy insight for the story. Ozzy was running full-page ads in the New York Times that were made to look like magazine covers, which you can see here. Notice right under Meet Carlos Watson is this quote attributed to Deadline, the best interviewer on TV. Twitter user and Vice correspondent Michael C. Moynihan did some digging and found the quote in a Deadline article. And the quote was said by Ozzy COO, Samir Rao, not anyone at Deadline. And Samir is the same guy who impersonated the YouTube executive. So let that sink in. Now, we've talked before about frauds. When you are selling stock in a company and you're lying and you're doing it in we're not talking about massaging the numbers here. We're talking about fraud, impersonating another person, outright lying, this saying the person's the best person, interviewer on TV, and it's from Deadline. You could see somebody weaseling their way saying, oh yeah, no, it was a mistake. Somebody in the graphics department saw the quote. They didn't, they should have put it was from us. We shouldn't have used it, but it was a mistake. No harm, no foul. But to create a Gmail address of a YouTube executive and then use a voice modulator in a premeditated fashion to get them off Zoom onto a conference call. This is like the premeditated murder. Like there's a difference between like somebody gets in a fight, they punch somebody in a bar fight and the person dies. It's like, well, I was drunk. I got in a bar fight. I didn't intend to kill them. Versus the person who's like, I went to the hardware store. I bought like ammonia. I bought plastic tarps and I'm a serial killer and I killed this person and then I buried them and, not to get graphic here, but premeditated. You understand what that means. So, Ozzy basically quoted themselves, but used a Deadline as the cover. It's crazy. Ozzy's a private company, so numbers are hard to verify. This is what I do for a living as an angel investor. I do diligence. And right now, I think there is so much fraud going on in the private company space and in crypto that it's going to be a parade of perp walks in the next 3 or 4 years. We already saw that with crypto, right? All the crypto cases, the ICOs, all the fraud we talked about in crypto 5 years ago. You're starting to see BitConnect and all these other crazy people get pinched. The long arm of the law takes a little time, but when the hammer comes down, it comes down. And this grift is just unlike any I've seen. For so many leaders, there's a moment in your personal and professional life where you realize you're in your own way. Yes, you're the blocker. You need help, and that's exactly where Belay comes in. But delegating your bookkeeping to someone can be intimidating and scary. Imagine, though, how your business would transform if you didn't have to worry about producing reports and balance sheets, if you had more time, energy, and focus to work on things that only you can do, like your product or hiring. You could achieve bigger goals because you have the freedom to focus on what matters. Belay, the incredible organization revolutionizing productivity with their virtual assistant service for growing organizations, can help you. That's why they're giving our listeners a free download of The Cost of Not Doing Your Bookkeeping. Your finances are not the place to be experimenting, holding your breath, fingers crossed, and hoping for the best. So, if you're ready to wave the white flag on handling your red and black margins, let one of Belay's experienced remote bookkeepers help. Get back to doing what only you can do, growing your organization, and leave the bookkeeping to Belay. Just text TWIST to 55123 or visit belaysolutions.com/twist for your free download of The Cost of Not Doing Your Bookkeeping today.